I apologize for my voice because actually it has become hoarse, but I try to do something about that, although as to no avail. Something that I'm going to tell you about. I'm going to speak about the security of the remote control industrial systems. Now a few words about myself. For 15 years, I celebrate when I see any hardware, any pieces of systems, and try to have that. And besides, I'm running the Positive Lab, that space where you are in now. I used to be a professor for 10 years. I was a professor in Bauman University also. I wrote a book, Reverse of Engineering Systems. Those who are interested in that topic and who are the beginners, I recommend it to you because actually this is for the beginners, for dummies. For the immersion, for instance, once you are doing the reverse but do not know how to approach the reverse of hardware. And what my presentation want to be about? My presentation want to be about such things. And once I was walking with my kid and I saw how the people were unloading the stones, and that manipulator is of no surprise, but any time I would be seeing such a manipulator. Next to that with some guy who would be pulling some leverages, and here I saw a remote control, and most importantly I didn't see the wire that would connect the remote control and the vehicle itself, so it was a remote one. Then I got interested whether it is a remote control, whether it is protected very well or not. So you remember I said that I celebrate every time that I see any hardware. And as far as I'm too far away from the construction equipment, I decided to look where it's being used, and such vehicles are being used anywhere. Such port hoisters, cranes at different enterprises, manipulators for the concrete pumps, etc. So, and it would be great actually to move 50 meters away in order to see how actually the crane operates and where, for instance, the concrete would be put. This is a kind of an application that I can highlight, and certainly was not the first, which was humiliating. Trite Micro made a research, and they published the results on the internet in terms of the security and safety of those systems, which were not great for the vendors. They looked at the market, they looked at lots of systems, they selected them, and these are the results that they obtained. So there is no safety, there is no security at all. They wanted to initiate several attacks to make a replay attack. That's the easiest way. For instance, then to disintegrate the protocol and to insert their own commands. Then they wanted to make a command of is stop. So, for instance, in such remote controls, there is a red button which you push, and immediately everything would stop because it means that something goes wrong. They wanted to make an modified connection of the remote control to another system, and they decided to see whether you can reprogram the remote control. Because, for instance, if certain parcel gets in, then the internal flash would work improperly. Well, for instance, the command would be inverted, so you can do whatever you want by means of attacking the supply chain or modified reprogramming. So I actually got disappointed because I thought that this is a totally unprecedented topic, a unique one, and I decided to look at what is available in the market 2024. And sadly, primarily, I was interested in the Russian market, but then once I made a vision of the Russian market, I looked at what is available internationally. It turned out that the vendors, sadly, the ones who actually analyzed the Trite Micro, they are still there, but in the Russian market, the situation is totally different. Many of those vendors, they left the Russian market. There are Chinese vendors, and those Chinese vendors are not just some local ones, but global ones, which are being sold from Amazon, for instance, or anywhere else. And they're sold to 60, 70, 80 countries of the world. So despite the fact that the cost is, the price is quite low, this compared to some European manufacturers, it turned out that China is conquering the market here as well. And at the same time, China certainly is still not bred from the Chinese manufacturers, meaning that they make replicas of the Chinese solutions. This is what we run into once we were buying a solution for ourselves, because it's very difficult to understand what it is. So the price is the same, it looks the same, and once actually you buy that, you understand that it's not Chinese-made, but it is Chinese-made. So it is adulterated Chinese product. And we wanted to look at the branded Chinese product and what we want to check, what we want to verify. We have the same wishes as Trade Minder had initially, but we did a different grouping. First of all, we'd like to interfere with the work of the control system. Gestop, not Gestop, but just break the work. Secondly, intercept the operation so that the remote control doesn't work at all. Then we actually change the firmware of the receiver of the remote control. And for instance, to physically destroy something, what I mean by physical destruction. For instance, you have a receiver, a signal, and once you send such a signal that would execute a code, then in essence, your device would turn into a brick. So the question is, can we remotely, locally, so to say, being at a distance from those devices, for instance, 500 meters away, send something, some command, that it stops being a device at all, turning into a brick. So we started, the first device that we got was Yuting Telecontrol. There is such a company, which was analyzed by the original investigator. This is a telecontrol. This is the very good clone. In essence, the solutions are the same, and so they replicated that, but they started developing and they evolved into their own brand. They are 22 years old already, and they are in the lower-end price segment, about actually $100–500 per one set. They produce about 60,000 sets a year, and certainly they supply that to the international markets, so to the North America and to other countries of the world. Besides, starting from the simple solutions and simple remote controls where actually there would be single buttons, then the buttons that you have to press 2 times, and the anti-explosive ones. So the number of models, the range of models is the same as from other vendors. We selected 2 models, F21 and F24, just as the basic ones, and actually the basic from the good ones, so to say. It turned out that they all are 133 megahertz. They all have 127 channels. And actually, they can reach 100 meters distance and have the security key. If you look at the lower part of the orange remote control, there is a white label, so that's a magnet in essence. So without that, the remote control will not work, that's true. But on the other hand, for instance, it doesn't provide any security. I don't see any RFID or anything like that. And for Chinese, actually, it is even funnier. So there is a magnet, but there is no gear cone. So gear cone was not supplied, and it means that the remote control works without the key anytime. 127 channels. An interesting thing, there are different versions. The old version, which is called Crystal, and the new version, which has no name at all. The old version, Crystal, they changed the frequency, because only when you would dismantle the remote controller, and you would have to buy a quartz and replace the quartz. We bought Crystal series and the updated version, and they look the same, despite that one says Crystal and it doesn't have any crystal. They are absolutely the same. So let's dismantle it and see what is inside. Inside you see a lot of miracles, wonders of the Chinese engineering. So a Kung Fu CPU, I've never seen that before, and there is a Comostec transmitter, so you can find that somewhere at least. It is not unique. and there is a writer port. So on the receiver, you have microcontroller, Kunfu, and GMOS receiver. So the device is very simple, and there should be nothing difficult about that. When datasheet looked at the receiver and transmitter, and they are called like that, and they are really transmitter and receiver, so there is nothing two-way communication. So the remote control will never understand that the receiver is not switched on, for instance. That was the first alarm that it would be too simple. But remember, and we decided to look at the 24th series, so it is just a clone, the same number of elements. The only thing that the transmitter is of a senior series, Quasnek one. But in terms of the receiver, it is the same. So the microcontroller is the same and the receiver is the same. That the receiver and transmitter could match each other and communicate to one another, and do not know. And there has to be some mutual communication protocol. And remember, I spoke about writer. There are two types of devices. One is called copier, which looks like a remote control. It would be connected to that very connector. And you push the button, connect Gercone to read the parameters, and actually you put that closer to Gercone with another device, and it would write the configuration to the remote control and not make a number of the same remote controls. And we didn't like that because it smells like actually it would be undermining the security architecture. There is also a data cable that you can use in order to connect that through USB to a computer. There is a software. The most recent one is 2019, and you can set any buttons. And funny enough, we didn't actually didn't manage to match the software and the receiver. So probably we are not skillful enough, but that's it. It didn't impact the results of the investigation, but I have a feeling that through that connector, especially Nitro said that they did an experiment in order to hack that using that very connector. We got interested how the information exchange looks like between the receiver and transmitter, and certainly we could make an NSDR radio to analyze that and guess something, but this is just a simple SPI. You can get it connected to a logical analyzer and get the data a guaranteed way. This is what we did. For those who do not know what SPI is, this is a sequential, consistent interface. The speed is about units of megahertz, and certainly there are faster ones. But the industrial solution would be using about 500 kilohertz. And it's been analyzed by the cheapest logical analyzer. And we sniffed several devices, and we realized that actually initialization of that connection between the receiver and transmitter and the chip helps to set a lot of parameters, preamble and other parameters. They are the same for all the devices. The only thing which differs is that's the number of the channel. On the label, actually, you see the channel number 72. So it would be written in the register of MOSTEC, which is called channel. So in terms of radio, everything is very unified, very easy, very simple, and streamlined between all the devices. And even it is streamlined between the series 21 and 24. So that Quastek is everywhere. So, okay, this is up to them, but probably there is something different on the protocol level. And we looked at how the starting package looks like when you push the button start, and when the transmitter matches with the receiver, and there are 4 different packages from different devices. And within armed you see that there is no protection at all, and C-byte that would be different also are not numerous. So the only difference is about the ID of the instrument of the device. If you know the parameters of the radio channel, And this is something that you can determine on your own. It means that you have sniffed everything and you have everything. So this is how all those packages look like. It turned out immediately that further on it won't be so interesting. And what would be not so interesting? So the line of the package is fixed, and you have just to put in the 10 byte, the third byte equal 1, so that the receiver believes that it starts working. And then, from time to time, you have to send a release packet, in order to keep the connection, because all the transmitters on all the receivers by default should actually switch off once the connection is lost. So it can be done only if the receiver is expecting some packet with some frequency, and if certain packets have not been received, it would believe that the transmitter is out and it would get disconnected. So in essence, it works like that. And sniffing all the buttons, it became obvious that there is nothing interesting about that. So just bit-based button, which could be coded with its own bit, and either it would require a full pressing or half of the pressure. And the emergency stop button is also there. And GIRCON and emergency stop is the same thing for that system. And sending that packet, you can simulate the pushing of the emergency stop, and the signal from the original remote control will never be received. And there is an interesting thing. The system that we analyzed, there are 3 of them. We analyzed them and we saw that some of them have fixed frequency of exchange. Others would change the frequency of exchange, depending on what buttons are pressed. For instance, if you just press the button only half way, actually it doesn't work so fast. If it is pressed fully, then it would be working much faster. So once we assembled our fake transmitters, we take the original one, the one that we bought from AliExpress, and we see that the receiver actually gets that much faster. A bit later I will tell you how it could be used in practice. Okay. We certainly can distribute, we can interfere with the work of the system, we can intercept the control. And actually, 2 objectives left are about the upgrading of the firmware and physical destruction. So this is the very first microcontroller that I saw in my life like that, and certainly there are no debuggers for such microcontrollers. It has its own debugger, which is called Kunfu KFDPA1, and it could be bought from AliExpress, only from one shop, unfortunately. It was bought, it was delivered, and we got connected, and we saw that the configuration of that microcontroller is not singular, so there are some security parameters that could be set, hash protection, for instance, and there might be some cryptography, and it contains Chinese documentation and SDK, and probably you can live with that, but why? So we got that firmware, but answering the question whether we can send anything specifically to that firmware so that it could be destroyed physically. Well, we didn't get anything on top of my head, but we didn't want to deep dive into that, so it is not an interesting thing. It's too easy. But besides, as I said, the receiver processes the signals much faster than the original transmitter transmit the signal. We did some testing and turned out that those relays that are installed on the receiver could be used for 25 Hz, changing the values. And if you do that for 27 hours, then actually those transmitters have a guarantee for 27 hours, or 1 million such things, and so we can do that. And bearing in mind that this is Chinese-made, within 24 hours, the transmitter's relays would fail.
было слишком просто.
But it was too easy.
Мы уведомили Сенсерт,
And we notified the vendor about that.
отправили в репорт после
We sent a report.
Сенсерт нам ответил, что
After CNCERT said that they are in touch, then, as usually happens
китайскими вендорами мы
with the Chinese vendors, we wanted to get some feedback, what is going on, and
3 апреля
on April 23,
сказали, что вендор устранил баги.
on CERT told us that the vendor did debugging, but there will be no more comments, and we said, okay, we trust you,
Идем дальше.
so let's move forward.
Мы решили взять что-нибудь,
We decided to take something non-Chinese
что не смотрели
out of what Trend Micro
на
didn't analyze and what is available in the Russian market. This is the Turkish system called Elfatec. It is actually more expensive, ranging from $500 to $2,500. We do not know how many sets they are selling, but they have a lot of pictures of their office, of their production, and that means that it seems that they are selling a lot, and they're selling that to 121 countries.
естественно, сертифицировано везде, где
And this is certified anywhere you want, and we bought something more powerful. We wanted to play with those joysticks.
2,4 гигагерца.
So it operates 2.5 gigahertz, and besides, Gearcon is used as the security key. So let's have a look at that.
Немножечко получилось порадоваться.
So we celebrated that because it is assembled much better, it is more quality, and they are using PIC 18. Raise your hands whether you
Версию,
have reversed
коллеги,
the PIC 18 assembler. No.
качестве приема передатчика
Okay.
используется НРФ. Притом
This is NRF, an old one, which is being used as a transmitter and receiver, and therefore
но не все так.
it
В приемнике
told us that it would be quite easy,
немножечко
but
другой пик.
quite not so. That's a little bit different PIC, and the same on NRF. NRF has a well-known for 12 years in attack using sniffing
Того же самого
with the help of the same NRF. We are not speaking about SDR.
трафик перехватить.
So intercepting the traffic is possible.
Мы собрали свой точно так же
We made our own fake transmitter, which helps on behalf of the original receiver
переслать. Но нам
to send that, but we also needed more parameters because there was no time
когда у нас опять
we wanted to spend on sniffer as far as we got SPI. We got connected to SPI, we analyzed
протокол.
the protocol.
Из интересного,
Out of interesting things,
у НРФ есть
NRF has channel,
минимальный размер.
and the minimum size is 3 byte of address, ranging from 3 to 5. They have 3 byte address. If you look at the label, we can see the channel,
Задается в конфигурации.
which has been set for the configuration of NRF, and there would be 2 bytes of address.
Вот этот вот десятичный адрес,
Because this 10-bit address is converted into 2 bits,
третий байт.
and I do not know where the 3rd byte is obtained from.
А как он получается, что-то сходное.
How we get the 3rd byte, this is something that I couldn't guess.
Потом уже, когда
Then,
была считана прошивка,
Jumping the gun once we read the firmware,
получается перемножение
I got it that the 3rd byte is obtained once you
канала.
multiply the channel and 2 bytes of the ID. This is just very funny. Why actually they could not extend the ID or something like that. But information exchange is also one-way street. So it means that the remote control knows nothing about the receiver, although NRF allows for the two-way communication, two-way street.
Казалось,
They just didn't do that, seemingly.
протокол тоже очень
Well,
простой.
protocol is very simple, 21 byte CRC16, and also there is a starting packet, and then you have to repeat the packets
Со статусом,
with a status assigned to that.
другая система.
So the system is a little bit different, so it has a status over there.
Это статус,
This is the status, the current status.
то есть там ушел в слип, не ушел в слип.
Whether it actually is in the sleeping mode or not in the sleeping mode.
Опять же, для того, чтобы сделать emergency все, стоп,
In order to make an emergency stop, it would be enough to put 1 bit and send that with the right parameters of NRF. So it is quite easy. We did a check regarding whether you can send the request faster. Yes, you can do that packet again. We can parse that with the buttons. The structure is a little bit different, so it means there is a value of the key and a modifier. Nothing interesting. Okay. So again, we believe that we can interfere with the work of the system, and we can totally hijack the operation, the control, because you can send much faster the information than the original transmitter. If you send much faster the commands that you need, the receiver would process that better, and it means that you can do whatever you want. Then we wanted to try to reprogram it, to change the firmware. So there is a technical connection so that we can get connected. And both on the receiver and transmitter, we got connected to using BKit. We read the configuration. We saw that in essence, there is a protection against recording and reading, except for BitBlock. And again, we remember that such an attack is quite well known, despite the fact that you can read only the content of BootBlock, and the rest, that about 2 kilobytes, and the rest of the code is not accessible because PIC operates with blocks of flash memory. But nevertheless, it means that you can do the following. You can erase BootBlock, you read it, scan it, then you make your own BootBlock that through UART will give you an access to the other parts of the memory. The memory is vulnerable to such an attack, and this way you can read the whole memory. You will make actually 2 replicas, and you erase everything else, and you will get the full image of firmware. So it looks quite easy, and in essence, this is something that disappoints me about the research. And you know what has to be done, and you have to do that routine, and you make the same mistakes that you didn't want to. So PIC cannot erase BootBlock. It can erase the full block. So we looked at the datasheet, and datasheet, there is some command that you have to type in. It says what commands have to be sent in order to raise BootBlock. So then we made our own BitBang in order to erase the BootBlock. And it works very well for the pilot chips and doesn't work at the target one. It turns out that certain bit configuration and pin configuration from that system sets the programming mode, and it is high voltage. It means that it has to be supplied with 9 volts. So nothing difficult, but we had to modify this and that in time lapses, and we're losing interest in that. But we did that tool, so we changed the firmware, and thanks for Hydra, because it has the decomplete for everything, including PIC, and it was an easier way. And I found a code. In the transmitter, I got the code for transmitting of NRF. Why the remote control that doesn't have anything but the battery and the lamp and the indicator that it works to get the code from NRF? And I blamed PIC, so I reversed that, and reversed that to the extent that we got the full code, and the code rewrites the parameters. But one element is missing, which is needed in order to make the code work. I have an assumption that the extended version of the remote controls of RD series has a screen. And that means that there might be some information shown on that screen, and if you buy the extended version, probably there would be two-way communication, and that means that probably you can send something to the remote control to jump the gun. I might say what we can send to the remote control, and there are no banks when it's like that, but there are some strange parcels that can help you to erase the flash memory, and then the remote control will never be launched next time. So the experiment does not confirm that this is just a reverse, but seemingly you can remotely collapse and destroy physically a remote control, which is quite expensive.
что хотели, тоже реализовали.
Okay, we did everything we wanted.
Точно так же мы можем очень быстро щелкать
And
реле.
as I said, we can actually click the relays, and those relays actually can stand 1 million such moves. And
И когда их много,
once you click those big relays, 25 hertz ones,
приятный звук, очень
this would be a very unpleasant sound. And so you can do that within 24 hours. 27 hours of such unpleasant sounds,
приемник тоже
and the receiver
у нас
would
в Нигу.
collapse.
Мы пошли в турецкий СЕРТ, мы пошли в
So we
не отвечал.
reported to Elfatec and to
Сказал, что связался.
Turkish T-CERT, and they got in touch with Elfasec, and they said that would render that information. Elfatec, 3 months later, got in touch with us and said, okay, we will fix everything. So there was a letter saying thank you, and we'll fix it all.
19 марта
On March 19,
а 16 мая
we published to CVE, and then
мы до этого просто пинговали, что
we just pinged them. So, meaning when you're going to fix that, and they said that we
эту информацию не рассказывать.
actually decided not to disclose that information to you, and we said, okay, okay,
Так тоже сойдет. Ну и последняя система
this is another solution.
это
And one more system that we're going to analyze, that about DCH radio, that China, but this is very high quality
комплект
Chinese project, which costs about $4,000 per one set, and they are selling about 100,000 sets per year, and this is OEM vendor. It means that you can see it under different brands and using their own brand at the same time. So we took two systems.
3 мегагерца.
So also 433 megahertz security key, and
И вы
they have RFID as the security key with the control of integrity of the data and everything. So it looks very, very nice.
как бы
So, and
интересней.
it advised us that probably it would be more interesting case.
Взглянули,
We looked inside and look.
нормального Китая внутри стоит нормальный STM.
So there is a normal STM inside a normal Chinese product, and there are chips sets from Silicon Labs.
Очень старый.
But that's a very old chipset and RFID reader, but inside everything looks quite nice.
Первый Китай, который
Much better than the first Chinese product that we have studied.
у приемника
The receiver
ровно то же самое.
has
тоже
almost the same STM,
приемный передатчик.
the same receiver and transmitter made by Silicon Labs. Okay.
А в дорогой версии мы
And the more expensive version, we on purpose took a version with a screen and with a two-way communication channel, and that's the same.
ничего, собственно,
I mean, nothing special,
что сразу навело нас на мысль, что
which made us think that
передние панели
we can do the full modification, so the case may change, the series of what it is may change, but in essence, the devices themselves inside are absolutely the same.
смотришь прошивку того же
And when you look at the firmware of Emphatec,
не соврать бы, по-моему, 56 килобайт.
so it takes about 56 kilobyte, and when I saw 56 kilobyte of data,
Вроде как бы
I asked actually, what is inside? So actually you click the relays and the buttons, but what is inside? Why 56 kilobyte? Out of those 56 kilobyte, about 46 kilobyte of tables are there that they are using in order to select what this device is about.
кнопочки, как будет зажигаться, на каком пине. То есть фактически есть
So in essence,
база,
there is a kind of a base, and a new device is just been added into one single firmware.
всего,
And
а потом в конфиге
so first, actually, you make a firmware for everything, and then the configuration will say that this is model like that and the button like that. But once you look at the code, that would be the same.
окей,
So not a very pleasant figure.
смотреть
So let's have a look at
Silicon Labs такой.
what Silicon Labs is about. Certainly, we found SPI and look at the piece of data sheet.
Рекомендуется для новых релизов.
And it even says not recommended for new releases.
Самый жесткий
A very old one. But in terms of initialization, this is the hardest one.
точно так же между двумя
With the same token, between different two devices, only two parameters will change: the number of channel
и
and
номер
the
слова.
number of sync word.
Слово полностью соответствует
And it complies, matches totally the ID on the RFID, just like the number of the channel. Okay. We said, let's have a look at what data is inside. 8-byte length packet, 8-bit checksum, and packet counter. I celebrated that I at least have a packet counter, although it is 1 byte only, but at least this is a counter. Let me say in advance, the packet counter is being ignored. It doesn't impact on anything, so it might be 0 or 1, whatever value, it still accepts that. So we identified that in the course of the hands-on experiment. So you send some starting packets, and then the packets that all the buttons are released. If actually you press a button, then another packet would be sent. Emergency stop also. You can send everything much faster. And third time it was not so interesting, especially once you buy that set for $4,000. And we said, okay, it is clear. We can do the same, just like we did it before. Let us just do reprogramming. So this is the STM level 2, but apart from that, there is UART. UART shows the log of what is being pushed, and in essence, we didn't even have to sniff SPI. In order to restore the protocol, it would be enough to look at the UART. But the process was streamlined, so first we sniffed the SPI and we looked at everything else. Although probably it would be the right decision to look at the UART. So UART has a log, but you just have to decode the same. And L series level 2 cannot be hacked so easily in order to read the firmware. And I can honestly say, I was lazy enough in order to do that. I thought that probably that would be enough. If you want to see something interesting that I doubt very much, and I thought that probably we would solder out some elements of that system and would use that. But now, I was too lazy to deep dive into that device. It didn't make sense to do that. In terms of non-disclosure, well, actually, we notified CNCERT, we notified the vendor CNCERT, responded and said that I will report that, but in March, we got mentioning that CNCERT tries to get in touch with the vendor, despite the fact that the vendor is big. And if you look at their website, you will see that there are very big companies that are using their products, but still the vendor fails to get in touch with the CNCERT. So this is how much they are interested in their own security. So as for the takeaways, we did everything we wanted with those devices, including the physical destruction and, well, the change of the firmware, only DCH radio. This is something that we failed. And so what are the takeaways? This is not just the security fraud, but rather that there is no security tool. In the 21st century, the solutions that are being offered, and there are solutions that would cost $3,000, $4,000. The vendors are not ready to see bugs, and you may say, let you fix those bugs, but they are not interested in debugging. And the attacks against the supply chains are very much possible and viable. So you have lots of distributors across the world, and the remote controls can be opened with no seals being attached. So you can change the firmware. And most hopefully, these are the things that operate some cranes, concrete pumps, etc. And well, actually, it may impact the physical safety of the people. When it all started, I thought that probably it would be a very interesting research, but turned out that, well, from time to time, we even have to urge ourselves to do that because we lost any interest in that. I'm done with my presentation, and thank you so much for your attention.
Вопросы у кого-нибудь?
Any questions? Do you have any questions? Yes, please.
Алексей. Алло, здравствуйте.
Так,
1-1. Can you hear me?
Алексей,
Говори,
ты
Павел.
сказал, что 4463 это старый чип, а чего
Да.
такое решил-то? Не особо он старый.
You said that 4364, that's an old chip. Why do you think it is old? Andrew, come again.
Сказал, что 4463
You said
это
that,
старый чип. Не особо он старый, он там пару лет всего
This is an old chip, but this is not an old one.
поставили.
They operate that for 2 years only, and before it would be used quite actively.
Претензий нет.
And I do think that there are no claims against that. No, no, there are no claims against that.
У них у Силаб
The only thing is that C-Labs has such a manner that they're making a patch.
там, видимо, какие-то выходят
For
фичи,
instance, when they fix certain bugs, then they online
проливается в этой
put
конфигурации.
that into the RAM. So not in that configuration. Okay, okay.
Флиппер может перехватить.
Flipper can intercept that, except for AlphaTech, it can intercept that if you tune that the right way, set that the right way.
Прошивки не перехватит. Назову это так. На пропаченной прошивке может.
If it is a patched firmware, then you can intercept.
Назовем это так, да. Но кое-что все равно надо погнуть.
But still, you'll have to bend something to hack something.
Да.
Yes, the answer is affirmative.
Он, ну, смотрите, у меня не было бетононасоса подключенного непосредственно к этой штуке.
So I didn't have a pump connected to that device. Well, actually, we look at everything in theory.
В благих намерениях. Поэтому мы не проверяли, как ведется оборудование. Но
And we didn't check how the equipment works. And what I checked,
у меня было сразу
and
интересно, что
there was an
будет,
interesting
если
thing. What would happen
я же не
if,
могу
for
да,
instance,
подать команду влево и вправо, да, на одном джойстике.
I cannot send the command on the right and on the left at the same time.
В коде приемника
So then in the code of the receiver, I got the
то есть у него есть
check
такая
algorithm. So there is such a thing there.
да, которая первая в пакете.
So the first in the packet, when they are parsing the packet, it would immediately go to one branch. You cannot say the engine which is connected to that rotate both to the right and to the left.
Может не успевать срабатывать, да, но
Probably it will not catch up with that, but we spoke about the how to
они подключено оборудование.
collapse how to destroy the relays. As for the equipment which has been connected to that, as far as you can simulate the commands, you can do whatever you want. It's a matter of what has been connected to that remote control.
Еще раз, задержка где? Наверное. Ну, опять же, смотрите. Ну, скорее всего, да. Но здесь, опять же, для вывода релюшек вы быстро щелкаете, да, например, а для того, чтобы сделать именно...
In order to destroy the relays, you have just to click them very fast, but in order to make some modified action with the equipment, you don't have to do that fast.
И в приемник, и в передатчик зашито...
Both the receiver and the transmitter has a configuration which is inbuilt.
Они все запейрены, грубо говоря. То есть нет такого, что вот вы там...
There is no such a case that you push the button, some button, and the pairing happens and the receiver or transmitter starts working. So telecontrol can do that. It's not made in China, but rather in Taiwan. And it was analyzed by Tride Micro. So, for instance, you push certain buttons at the same time. If you turn on the remote control, then all the transmitters and receivers would be paired if they are in the proximity, but not in that firmware. There is one more question, may I ask it? As far as the transmitters and receivers work on frequency 433, it's quite low. And you can actually poison or somehow contaminate the air with the cheap equipment. Well, in essence, that's true. You have multiple parcels, for instance, the same button, once you push that, it's not just one parcel that's being sent, but you push the button, and with a frequency of 10 Hz, those parcels are being sent. Then the radio parameters that help you to configure the receiver and transmitter
настроены на то, что вы работаете прям в
are
зашифрованном пространстве.
supposed to work in a very noisy environment. So even if we try to contaminate the air, still there will be some communication between the receiver and transmitter.
Делать нормально, конечно, не будет.
Well, certainly if you do that the right way, certainly the parcels would not be transmitted, would not be rendered home.
Герц, ну, мы повесили на релюшки, почему-то быстрее эти релюшки не отрабатывают. Возможно, это связано
So
с
somehow those relays cannot work faster, so this is being run by the software.
почему-то плюс-минус, да, ну там 23,
That with about 23 or 25, that was from AlphaTech.
25.
It was 25.
Быстрее. Релюшки
So it would be sending faster, but the relays do not click faster, do not work faster.
пакеты принимаются.
Although the packages or packets have been received, so it does mean that they trigger an error, so they manage to process that, but probably something goes wrong or slow.
Пять милливатт.
5 milliwatt,
DCH 10 милливатт.
and DCH has 10 milliwatts, so this is about nothing.
Да, но я, кстати, после того...
That's true.
Да, да.
Yep.
Организационная безопасность и, как говорится, как
That's about
исполнить
organizational safety, and as I put that in my presentation, clear away from the load.
Да, но здесь, опять же, я после того, как вот это все посмотрел, начал обращать
When I
внимание,
looked at that, I started paying attention what is being used. And for instance, I got a case with a remote control, and then all the manipulators, all those arms, they are not supplied with a remote control.
в принципе,
So, generally speaking, probably.
но
Some countries have those remote controls more widespread.
там вот эти кранбалки,
Where, for instance, when different cranes, for instance,
смотрел, ну, то, что
are being operated from the remote control, at least what I see in the Moscow street, usually there would be a guy pulling the leverages.
там обычная RFID-метка на
That's an ordinary RFID
15 мегагерц.
solution for 13 megahertz.
Если там даже закрытый секторатор, там словами порой, потому что я
And
там сразу. Вот, если честно, не помню. Вот, а там просто
I
конфигурация.
don't remember, so the configuration in essence is the same, just like the prompt and the receiver.
Какой канал?
So it says what channel it is, it says what sync packet is,
Пакет это у них айдишный. И конфигурация.
and the configuration of the buttons, which are also being recorded.
Он на старте считывается.
It's been read from the very beginning, from the outset.
Часть. И
So the RF part would be triggered, and
что вы когда
the
заказываете,
buttons would be configured.
покупаете
For instance, when you buy
то же самое, там, не знаю, Китай, совсем, вот эти вот
Chinese products,
Эльфатек, мы покупаем
Alphatec, we bought it
стандартный, а DCH
from
купили стандартный,
an original manufacturer, and DCH actually, one was
брали, нам сказали,
an expensive one.
мы такие, ой, нам, пожалуйста, потенциометр, нам, пожалуйста,
And we were asked actually what buttons you need, actually 2 joysticks, etc. And they said that's no problem, and they did a test panel for us, so the configuration is tailored for the customer. And they do the same for the RFID tag, so that you know actually what button operates the joystick, etc., etc.
Да.
Yes.
На экране у нас версия еще и с каном.
We also have a CAN version as well,
Выводится параметр CAN,
and you show the parameters of CAN on the screen.
паролельный обмен.
So this is a two-way communication, but really this is actually double one-way communication. So these are totally different devices,
Просто там отрисовывает на
and
экране
it would show on the screen the parameters,
параметр на экране рисуется по заранее
and
шаблону, который
it would be using some preset template, but there is nothing interesting about that. At least we didn't see anything.
нет.
No. Okay.
Он об этом не знает.
It doesn't know it.
Да.
Okay.
Да. Да, как раз мы проверили, что он замыкается. Да.
Yes, we checked it, and
Но опять же, у нас не было исполнительного механизма.
But there was no execution mechanism. We do not know what goes on in reality.
Да.
Yes, the answer is affirmative.
Вроде 25 Гц для реле тоже не самый...
25 Hz for a relay, this is not the fastest solution.
Реле может быстрее.
So relay can work much faster.
Еще вопросы?
More questions?
Не знаю.
I don't know.
Что у меня
I just put it.
больше там руководящие должности. Я
I'm
больше,
more a manager.
там, занимаюсь организацией работ.
I'm dealing more with the organization of the works, and this is something that I do for interest, out of curiosity.
Ты должен что-то посмотреть.
So, as my guys say, once a year you have to look at something.
Что я хочу
So
посмотреть.
once a year, I decide that I want to do something, and when I have some free time, I do that.
Поэтому пока еще не знаю.
So I do not know yet.
Все, спасибо тогда.
Are we done? Then thank you so much.